Do we think for ourselves, and can we, and should we? Now there's a question. We all aspire to, but to be told that it's impossible seems, frankly, ridiculous. But accepting in the most trivial of cases, it is in fact impossible, and even if it were possible, it would be pointless, like a voice crying in the wilderness and in an unintelligible language. And this is because our thoughts are no more ours than the air that we breathe is ours. Just as every time we breathe in, we inhale from the atmosphere some of the molecules that Julius Caesar breathed out in his last gasp, so our thoughts are composed of elements from that great collective matrix of concepts and narratives that circulate among us now and always have been circulating. We join this symphony for our lifetime. At our voice, we recognise ourselves only in hearing our own song, and then we leave it to others when we die. We each bring our own unique touch, a unique constellation or configuration of these narrative elements into being. Some are not so powerful or affecting as others. They are all profoundly original. If we don't appreciate this, our part in the collective, the uniqueness of our contribution to the whole, and fail to participate with the richness in that symphony, our song will never be heard or be lost forever, and our contribution to the thinking forward of this mimetic symphony is lost. This is radically different to the usual idea of the individual. The self is uniquely special, though not in that narcissistic way that drives us crazy, but in a compassionate and contributive way that liberates us. In fact, to experience this is to be on the threshold of liberation. We're not independent selves, and we are not independent thinkers, in that we can even imagine that possibility that we are independent thinkers is due to the conceptual metaphors that we think in, as Lakoff and Johnson explored in their book, Metaphors We Live By, on cognitive linguistics. Conceptual or abstract thinking is largely metaphorical. It draws on metaphors from our everyday material experience to understand abstract concepts. The metaphors we think in are seconded to their abstract applications from the domain of embodied daily life, and the assumptions we have about how the mind and thinking arise come from the understandings that are freighted in with these metaphors. Phrases like "in my mind" or "having a thought" lead us to understand our minds as personal containers, like my room. But our minds, like rooms, bounded things with limited size and locality and temporality. And our thoughts is like furniture, objects that belong in the mind? Almost certainly not. Yet these unquestioned assumptions, they're not even made, but they ride in unnoticed on the metaphors that we use to think about mind and thinking. This is the language we think in. It's been absorbed in our earliest linguistic interactions from childhood on, and which subsequently bind not only the thoughts that we do have, but those that we can have. But if we see our existence as thinking beings is not bounded by the skin or temporality, but extends through language and education, communication, into an almost infinite network of concepts and memes, drawing on metaphor. It's like an atmosphere. Sometimes it's called the noosphere, other times it's called the meme-sphere, supermind, collective unconscious. We may enjoy the fiction of free, individually determined thought, nowhere more so than in science, as we freely examine the evidence and conceive the best explanations to fit the observations. But this is not so. Even there is thinking that cannot escape the illusions of the metaphors we use. We relinquish them only under great pressure, because they seem so intuitive, reasonable, which of course they are, and their replacements are often so counterintuitive. Past examples of what began as counterintuitive ideas replacing more intuitive ones include the round Earth replacing the more intuitive flat Earth, gravitational forces acting without contact replacing planets riding on heavenly spheres, unconscious psychic dispositions replacing evil spirits causing mental illness, the Copenhagen model of the atom replacing the planetary model. Today, these new understandings don't seem counterintuitive at all, as the metaphors have become bedded in. Doubtless, relativity and quantum mechanics will one day seem less counterintuitive. It's all about the metaphors that become bedded in. But as the old concepts wither and are replaced by new and hopefully improved metaphors, the narrative evolves. We're all participants in this evolution, affecting it and being affected by it. We can degrade it with poor quality material and the quality of our thinking suffers, or we can enrich it with high quality and with high quality results. We can see many times in history this happening. It's become tragically degraded, for example, in the Nazi era in Germany, or it can become beautifully enhanced, as in 5th century Athens. In both of those cases, the effect on the populace was quite palpable. This is a focus of evolution of our species now, superseding genetic evolution in speed, being Lamarckian. The evolution now becomes a goal-creating process, an intrinsic or natural teleology. To conclude, I want to examine a conceptual metaphor or analogy, imperfect of course, for the mind. And that is the internet, just as processing in the computer is to the World Wide Web, so thinking in the individual brain is to the mind. In this sort of metaphor, the mind is not just a mass database, but an organic processing reality extending across individuals, dissolving their defining boundaries. Like the World Wide Web, it's not materially located, but is distributed through all humanity. This metaphor reinforces the reality of non-localized immaterial entity, a difficult idea, particularly in this materialistic zeitgeist that we inhabit. It's enhanced by storage materials like books, but it's fundamentally about communication, and like the internet, contributed to by everyone, wittingly or unwittingly. Like the World Wide Web, it's not transcendental, there's not an overmind across some supernatural divide, but it's an emerging, imminent reality. It's a glass bead game of downloading and uploading components, uniquely shaped, constellated by the individual. It's a metaphor that underlines the interconnectivity of life, of interbeing.